Hello and welcome to the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast with me, Clive Barber, and my good mate, Noel Tom. For the days when you can't ride your bike, there's always the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast. So Noel's made it on.
I'm going to be using a little mute button on this type just to make your editing easier. Is that a good idea, or do you want me laughing out loud?
No, I think I'll just leave it running because there's like this magic setting on the thing I use, and it records two channels. It records me, and then it records you three. And then when there's pretty much silence at your end, the program automatically just cuts you out anyway. So, and if it doesn't, I go in and delete all the quiet bits anyway because they have like hiss and hum on. So don't worry about it. It won't
surprise you, Will, that I'm not enjoying the full experience.
He hasn't got the video working at the moment.
Yeah, even when I turn on incoming video, it doesn't make any difference.
You are using a 40-year-old Mac that you bought second-hand off of charity shop.
Yeah.
We can see you anyway, Noel, so leave your shirt on, obviously, and your trousers and everything. Don't go for a piss. Don't knock one out while we're recording, because that would be embarrassing. It does happen.
Oh, I meant to say, is this mic any better?
Yeah, you're beautifully clear now.
Ah, super.
You sound like Val Doonican or somebody like that.
I don't know who that is.
You're kidding. So have you heard of Val Doonican?
Didn't he make socks or something?
Jesus, young people today.
Is it Val D'Isette? I've heard of Val D'Isette. Val Kilmer. Do you mean Val Kilmer?
I thought you got Val Doonican socks. I know Val d'Isette is the ski resort, and Val Kilmer once played Batman.
Oh, we had an amazing season night in Val Doonican.
Somebody probably did. Oh yeah, Val Doonican was a bit of a crooner and a raconteur, and he was very big in on one of the three channels back in the olden days when we were kids.
Probably a huge Saturday night show after Cilla Black.
We should probably talk about motorbikes, shouldn't we? No, you've just met Alex. Alex joined us last week for what turned out to be part one. We talked about which bike you should get for about 38 minutes and then came to the obvious conclusion you should just get a really small one. We also talked about what kit you should get, minimum requirements, what you need to chuck on your bike.
Oh, I thought about that, Clive. I forgot to say waterproof socks if you haven't got waterproof boots.
Yeah, obvious really, isn't it? Yeah, definitely waterproof socks. Are you drinking whiskey as well, or is that actually your urine?
It's not, though. I'd be very unimpressed with myself if it was that colour. It's a Mac, so it's like whiskey and green ginger wine, which I'm sure is sacrilegious for some people, but I like it.
Will's a whiskey man. Is that okay, Will? Whiskey and ginger wine. You're on mute.
Yeah. Oh, because the cat was at the window yowling at me again. Yeah, I'm actually on. I'm on this one. Where is it?
Wow, you got a tray. That's cool.
That's the one. That's the one I gave you, wasn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
fantastic.
Not much left of it now, actually. Goes smooth.
Archie's actually opened the bottle that you recommended to him. Opened it last night. So it's taken him a month to get onto it, but we got there in the end. So anyway, look, normal rules apply. Only one person speaking at a time. Try and avoid that active listening where you go, oh yes, and things like that. I struggle with that. But and also try and avoid the ums and the because it drives me fucking insane having to edit all those out. So try and speak without those. If you do go wrong, just feel free just to stop and start again. Because again,
it's called active listening.
Yeah, it's active listening is especially important when you're doing, when you're on the phone.
Yeah.
Because it just shows to somebody that, like you just did then. Yeah, I'm still here. I'm hearing you, and that's active listening.
It's sort of don't do everything you would do on a first date, isn't it? Well, I imagine you do a lot. You'd do a lot of active listening on a first date, wouldn't you?
You would, yes. Yeah, but
I would.
Yeah. No, I think you'd be right to do that, but it doesn't really work on a podcast.
It drives me nuts on podcasts. There are a few things. There's vocal fry, uptick, and active listening that drives me nuts on.
So I've been doing this podcast.
Oh, I know what I was just going to say. And starting sentences with "so," and you just began a sentence with "so."
I do that all the time.
Yeah. So
what are those three things you said, Will? What did it actually mean?
I suppose vocal fry is when you go, and I don't really know what the answer is.
I bought a lobster.
Yeah, I think it's a California thing. Upticks.
What are the other two?
Uptick,
No, I don't know. That's why I'm asking the question.
No, because that's a question. So I bought a motorcycle.
Seriously?
Oh man, you're in like Australia.
Trail?
Yeah, I was going to say that's just Australian, isn't it?
Australian questioning intonation.
Yes. And what's the third one?
Active listening. Yeah.
Okay.
This podcast to listen to, but she does it the whole way through. Yeah. I'm really interested in what the other person is saying.
That's why I spend 5 hours editing this stupid bloody podcast, which nobody listens to, apart from Alex, and he's on it this week.
I even listened to myself, like when you sent it through, like straight away, and my children were running around, and they were like, "Daddy, is that you in the laptop?" And I'm like, "Yes, it is.
Yes, baby,
it is. It's not just that you've got my phone and recorded me. It's a proper grown-up thing. It's like the only grown-up thing I've done for about 4.5 years."
You lied to your children.
Deal with it.
I was like, this is one thing that didn't involve you. Constantly, like even my work calls involve my children. Like I'm having a conversation with my boss, and then like halfway through, he's like looking at me, going like, "Are you all right, Alex?" And I've just realised I didn't go on mute when I said, "Yes, sweetheart, what do you need?" And he's like, I assume you're not talking to me. And I'm like, "Oh no, sorry."
I'll come and wipe it in a minute.
I've got a great story about that. I was on a team call actually, and my daughter was potty training at the time, and she ran up, and I didn't have myself on mute, and she's like, Dad, I've done it. I did a massive poo. And just like my whole team erupted into laughter. I thought it was great.
It's like when Greg once told us through our WhatsApp group that Juno had done a poo on the trampoline.
So listen, Danny messaged us, and he's going to love this bit, because he said, when it's just Clive and Noel chatting, that's when the magic happens.
Yeah.
I think he's right, but you just did that awful vocal fizz or whatever it's called.
Yeah, stop that immediately.
So Danny's going to like this bit, but everybody else has probably switched off by now. I can get the stats as to how long people actually listen for, and most people have switched off within 10 minutes, because we're not actually talking about motorbikes. That's unless I don't edit all this out, but there's some good stuff in there. Right. So I've got a list of things that we didn't get onto and that we should talk about. And the first thing I wanted to talk about was the TRF, which bizarrely seems to be quite a contentious thing on social media, because people always come up and say, anybody know how I can get hold of a map, or anybody know any lanes in such and such an area? And you just think, just join your local TRF. But then a lot of people come back, "Oh, I'm not spending 50 quid on that, you get nothing back." Never could that be further from the truth. And I think the TRF has changed massively certainly over the last 16 years that I've been a member. So when I first joined, I went along to the meetings, and to be fair, nobody really talked to me. They had their meetings, they discussed various things, didn't get talked to, and I kind of left not having any new riding buddies. But certainly the Cumbria TRF has changed massively now. So they organise rides, they make sure everybody that joins is invited along to a ride. I think it's really different, and I would like to hope that a lot of the other TRF groups have similarly changed if they weren't like that in the first place. There's a few other things to talk about the TRF as well, but I just wanted to get your experiences and thoughts on the TRF.
I've got a lot of experience with the TRF as it happens. So I think I offered to help with some IT bits and bobs, and then Mario, who was one of the directors at the time, said, "Oh, you can do computers, can you? Do you want to be a director?" And I thought, yeah, that sounds great. I joined as a director for about 6-7 months or something.
Wow.
Redid some bits and bobs, kicked off the Green Roads project thing. And then it all just got a bit much, because the leadership is constantly under fire from some of its members, which is a bit of a shame. I think, like you say, it's changed massively over the last 16 years or so. I think a lot of the members didn't like that rapid change, so it was quite confrontational for a bit. But now that change has happened, a lot of those directors have kind of moved on. So now it's less contentious, I think. There's a new status quo.
Well, the big change, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the big change is it's gone from keeping the routes almost private and not really telling anybody where you're allowed to go and ride.
Yeah, like the Magic Circle.
Because there's a fear that too many people are actually going to go out there and end up getting all the lanes closed. And And I guess the new TRF, and I don't know, I've got no inside information, but my guess is that the new TRF has said, well, actually, what we want to do is get more people out there riding and taking part and contributing. And actually, you've got a far greater lobbying power to actually help keep those lanes open.
Yeah, if I can speak on behalf of the TRF, I mean, they would probably say that that's problematic in the same way that it's problematic for the TET, in that people might download, say, the trails local to them at a certain point in time and then go back to them after their membership has lapsed, say, and those trails aren't legal anymore. So they probably had all the issues that the TET has in terms of publishing legal routes at the time, and that might be partly why they've,
you're right, and I think you're also wrong now as well, because you're not a member.
Yeah.
you don't have access to the new Green Road map, which is effectively a live. Again, Will, you do computers and that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a live mapping piece of software application that shows you where all the green lanes are, and that's kept up to date based on TROs and any other new information as the TRF finds it.
Yeah, so they've sort of pulled all the information. They have all the stuff, the legal stuff, which doesn't necessarily correlate, and it's hard to read. So if you were starting out without this map thing, it's pretty hard. You have to go to the definitive map, and if you cross the border, you've got to go to another definitive map, which means you might have to go to a library somewhere, which is a nightmare. So they pulled together all the different groups and got all of their rights of road officers to kind of chip in local knowledge and build their sections of the map. So when you go to it, it should be, that you can just see all of the byways that you can ride on your motorcycle that weekend. It's pretty special.
So you could basically then create a GPX, maybe not in that application, but you could link it up with something else, base camping Garmin or whatever, and just copy the routes, and you could create a GPX for wherever you want to go. But because you're not a member, because you're too tight to pay the 55 quid, you can't look at it, and I'm not going to show you mine either.
It's a little bit more complicated than that, my relationship with the TRF.
Yeah, it isn't, is it? You're just tight.
No, it's not. So this has been in place for quite a while, has it?
No, it's fairly new. 6 months or something, tops.
Yeah, they've been working on it for years and gathering all the knowledge from the local groups, but they've just kind of launched it to the membership in the last 6 months or so.
Yeah, I think it's still in beta at the moment. I think it's interesting from a TRF perspective, because I mean, my first experience of the TRF was, I guess, a modern take on it with social media and things like that, where everything is really well communicated. I was definitely felt like when I came along to the first meeting that I was welcomed. I think we mentioned in the last podcast, you kind of introduce yourself and you say what bike you've got, and everyone kind of like, it's at that point that everyone kind of like nods and all that kind of stuff, and it's that initial bond. But I found my experience of the TRF really interesting, actually, though I did notice that I was a bit younger than some of the other participants in the room, which I didn't necessarily think was a bad thing, but it was interesting nonetheless. But yeah, I found it like really insightful to hear people talking about like their experiences, and because it was all on social media, straight afterwards there was lots of messages there going, oh, we're riding here, we're riding there. So a lot of the time I've never really needed to use the maps because I've just been invited along to rides and you can just follow along behind people. Though I always think it's really interesting when you kind of pop out on a road that and you think, oh, I'm here, this is interesting, and then about 20 minutes later you pop out at another road. So I guess making that story and mapping those routes together in your head is as interesting as kind of building the map to do again. But yeah, definitely a good experience to have all of that knowledge kind of available to you in people as well as technology.
So yours has been, like I guessed it would be, a fairly positive experience then more recently.
Yeah, I mean, even my first experience there, one of the agenda items was some of the technology that people were using. So What 3 Words was brought up, which a lot of people were talking about a couple of years ago. I had done a little bit of work with them through the company I was working at the time. And so when I expressed that I kind of knew a few details, I was encouraged to share them. So standing up in front of a group of people I'd never met before, but feeling at ease to be able to do that and providing some information was really good. And straight after, I got that experience of people coming over and going, oh, interesting bike, tell me about it. I had one of those. Have you checked this? Have you done that? And that was really nice. And within a couple of weeks, we were able to go riding, and having those people there to share that experience with. I guess lockdown then happened, and that kind of put a bit of a kibosh on things. But yeah, it was certainly a positive experience, and Facebook and social media really helped keep that community of people, which was, again, really, really helpful.
The other thing the TRF gives you is part of the fee you pay effectively gives you legal insurance as well. So if you are riding on a lane that TRF have said is legal, and you get pulled for it, then they will also support you with the legal case as well. And also, we'll come on to riding on your own in a minute as well, but it also automatically gives you some people to ride with, right? There are I think there seems to be about twice weekly rides up in Cumbria now. Some are in the week and some are in the weekend. So there's usually somebody arranging something for you. I don't understand why anybody wouldn't support the TRF, because obviously the main thing they're there for is to make sure the lanes stay open. They're constantly fighting legal battles up and down the country. In Cumbria, we do an awful lot of I should say they, because I don't do so much, but they do an awful lot of maintenance of the lanes in conjunction with the local authorities, highways agencies or whatever. So the Old Coach Road being a great case in point, that they raised about 20 grand, got loads of free materials, got loads of equipment, got everything legally in place to do it, and then actually pretty much rebuilt large sections of that lane that were damaged by the flood in 2015, and it's standing up really well now it's been done properly. It stands up really well to the abusive weather that it's actually been getting. So it's things like that, and that also leads me on to that point as to how you deal with people that criticise you for riding your bike. And it's like, well, I'm a member of the TRF. That is all about maintaining the lanes, not just from a legal perspective, but we also put a lot of time, money and effort, free manual labour into making sure that actually we're not destroying them. We're doing completely the opposite. We're actually maintaining them. Will, are you still active in the TRF? Are you still, or are you just a member now?
Less active than I was, but I did when I started out. I was on that GS, and I would do the same thing. I would turn up to meets, and the first thing was that people would say, "The hell are you doing on that? I'm not sure you're going to get around this," and you would. But if you came off, there would be size and whatnot. So I set up a sort of a Facebook group to get together people riding bigger bikes, so we could do that together. It's got like 6,500 members now, but I've sort of stopped using Facebook, so they do their own thing now.
Wow.
But that used to be pretty active. We would set up meets, and you'd get, we'd limit it to 6, but 6 big bikes going around. We went all over the place. Yeah, I think less so now. I don't go to the meetings because they're inconveniently really far away. Everything's done kind of online. And I think I went to enough of the ride outs that I met kind of the people that I would ride with. And now we just text each other, which is probably goes against the spirit. But I still pay my membership fees. And
that's what I do. I still pay my membership fees and still on the Facebook group. But to be honest, I never found anybody from the TRF to ride with 16 years ago. I basically found Noel and...
Yeah, we met through the TRF, didn't we?
No, we didn't. We didn't. We met through some...
Yeah, we did,
or was it on the forum then? We met on the forum?
It was on the forum, yeah.
Okay. So basically I met Noel on that forum, and I think I met Andy, another guy we ride with.
Fast Andy.
Fast Andy. A big bike Andy. He's also got a KTM. I met him on another forum potentially, and 16 years later we're still riding together. So you get to a stage, you get your bunch of mates and you're comfortable with riding with people and you kind of stick with them. And it's really important with motorbike riding that you actually trust and have faith in the people that you're riding with, because there's nothing worse than riding with the thing that annoys me is people that ride right up your chuff, and if you're going to slow down they're going to crash into you.
Yeah, we know who we're talking about.
Yeah, he's not on today.
Yeah. No. This is the challenge of motorcycling generally, isn't it? Is finding people that you like to ride with and who ride in the way that you want to ride, and that you aren't kind of going, ooh,
yeah,
as you ride behind them,
or order the wrong sort of milk in their latte, that type of thing.
Yeah.
I actually found that one of my friends, it's a friend of my wife, but
a friend of a friend of my wife.
Something like that, yeah. But we kind of like became friends because we talked about motorbikes whenever we kind of saw each other. And it wasn't until I bought my Yamaha, my WR250, that I found out that he had a Husqvarna 250 as well. It's great to be able to find people who you might not expect are riding, and then to be able to go out and ride with them is fantastic. And I think you learn so much in those early days.
You're lucky. You've found people you like riding with. That's great for you. Excellent. So I think we've done the TRF. Anything else to talk about on the TRF?
Well, it's obviously a force for good, isn't it? In that you do meet people through it, and then you can probably, hopefully, quite quickly create your own sort of subgroup.
Yeah, if needs be. Yeah,
from people that you've met. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you can always set aside the social thing. Like, you think about it as a group that for you to meet people, you can almost just put that aside and say, you pay your road tax. You should also pay your green road tax, and that's kind of what the team.
Absolutely. And they're there for you just in case the shit hits the fan legally. So it just seems a no-brainer to me. You're going to spend 200, 300 quid on a pair of boots. You're going to spend endless coin on doing up your bike. Just ship 50 quid to the people that make sure that we can keep riding forever. So the other thing then is if you're not a member of the TRF, or you need to go somewhere else and you haven't got access to the Green Road map, how do you find where you can ride?
With great difficulty. I think there are various resources. You've got View Ranger, who, RIP, they're dying because they've sold themselves to a company called Outdoor Active. I mean, there are a lot of outdoor, put your GPX in and you can meet people and do cool stuff, but none of them are kind of motorcycle or car friendly. So that's probably going away. But View Ranger used to be pretty good. You could sort of...
Would that actually give you routes?
Yeah, give you a full route.
Could you trust those routes though? No, that's the part of the problem, isn't it?
So technically you could get the route and then you would have to cross-reference it with all of the definitive maps of every county that you cross through, which is a nightmare because you've got overlaying TROs. It's possible to do, but you have to do it every time you ride pretty much because they change so frequently.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Will, but some of the definitive maps around my way are not particularly easy to understand and read. They're pretty old. So I've spent quite a lot of time looking at some of the definitive maps local to me, and I don't know that I would necessarily trust my interpretation of them anyway. So I found that actually quite difficult.
And the other thing is OS maps. So there's boats, byways open to all traffic, and UCRs, which are unclassified country roads. But the problem was with that, you don't know the legal status at any one time. They may be
they're even worse. Yeah,
temporarily closed with the TRO, temporary restriction order. And then there used to be things called RUPs, and I can't remember what RUPs stands for, but they're now called restricted byways, which we're not allowed on anymore after the NERC Act of 19 whenever it was, or 20 whenever it was. So OS maps give you some idea of where you can go, but they're not fully up to date, and they're also missing a load of stuff as well. Because
Open Maps is a pretty decent resource because it's like the OS maps, but it's crowdsourced, so you will get more up-to-date info from people that know what they're doing.
Yeah, these are all quite technical solutions, aren't they? And if you've not got a technical bent, for example, say you can't actually log onto a Teams / Zoom call, then you're not going to be able to use an open source mapping.
Yes, absolutely. It's very difficult when you get to bike side of life.
I think this is why it's good to meet up with the local TRF guys, because a lot of the time they're going to have a lot of local knowledge and to be able to kind of support you. One of the issues that been kind of recently here is that people putting up signs that aren't necessarily legit. So signs saying, this byway is closed to motorbikes, I think is one that has been around recently, but at least you've then got the support of local people who actually understand which byways are open, which ones are shut, to actually help you and support you in that kind of decision making, because it can be really difficult, especially if you're out, one of you or two of you, and you come across something, and it's really then difficult to then navigate around and understand kind of where you can go.
So I think we're all agreed, join the TRF. New friends, find your way around, get access to full and updated maps. I wanted to talk about the TET. So in my notes it says, is the TET the greatest thing to happen to trail riding in the last 20 years? Do you have a yes or a no answer?
I've only been riding for like 6, so...
Is it the greatest thing to have happened in the last 6 years?
Definitely the best thing to happen in the last
Alex,
6
in the last 2 years?
It's definitely an aspiration to ride sections of it for me. It looks amazing. From all of the content out there, it's certainly an aspiration to get my riding to a point where I can fully enjoy a day in the different terrain that's out there. I think we mentioned last time, there isn't a great deal of it round East Anglia. So there would be a couple of issues in getting it closer to it, but there's lots of solutions to that. So it's something that I really, really want to do. Kind of multi-day riding is something that I would really like to do in the future. I've not had the opportunity to do it yet, but it's certainly something that I would love to do.
Good man. And Old Father Time, what do you think?
I think it's a great thing for motorcycle travel. I think there's a debate to be had as to its impact on trail riding, just because it does funnel everyone down one route a little bit. But as a force for good in terms of travel, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. So you say that, but what evidence do you have that people? Well, I mean, people are going down the same routes, but have you ever seen? Do you see? And it actually goes past your house pretty much, doesn't it? Do you see that many or hear that many bikes?
I do, yeah. And I would say more than I was 4 or 5 years ago. But it's not far. It's not an obnoxious amount for me, because I like to look out and stop whatever I'm doing to see who it is.
Make new friends.
Yeah. But no, I mean, that's our experience of the Tet, isn't it? That it is absolutely deserted wherever we've been. There's not a lot of traffic on it, but it certainly does.
Absolutely.
It certainly does point everyone down the same line a lot of the time. Although, having said that, when you look at the Tet route now, it is like a child's been let loose with a felt pen. It isn't just one line. In a lot of areas, there are lots of different routes circling around in lots of different directions.
It's growing. So it's now. I'll read what it says on the
website. In that respect, it is kind of pandering to the way it is being used. You know, it isn't being used as a sort of a route from one end of Europe to the other. It is being used now as a way of accessing trails in your area.
Because it's a readily available resource, and it is very, very freely available and easy to use. That's one of the great things about it. So let me read what it says on their website. It says the Trans-Euro Trail, for those of you that haven't heard of the Tet, the Trans-Euro Trail, is a cultural dirt road adventure from deep within the Arctic Circle to the doorstep of Africa and back. Powered by a team of enthusiastic volunteers called Linesmen, the Trans-Euro Trail relies on its community to find and manage the evolving network of tracks that crisscross 30 countries. So, John Ross, you're a bloody legend, mate. And if you want to hear more from John, who basically created the Trans-Euro Trail along with our friends supported by our friends at Adventure Spec, then you should go to episode 2 of the Trail and Adventure Motorbike podcast, because we actually interviewed John in a secret location next to a very noisy river on our very first rubbish microphone. Well, there's 4 of us sat round talking into one microphone, but yeah, it's all right. It's a bit annoying, but you can listen to that. 51,000 kilometres. It's huge.
And there's some amazing video content on YouTube that further shows how amazing it is as a route. When you watch some of that content, it's sometimes difficult to believe that it's in the UK if the trail that they're riding is actually in the UK. Are
you thinking amazing. Of any particular filmmakers there, Alex?
I've got a couple that I kind of favour. The production quality is brilliant. Again, like that inspiration to get trail riding right, and I think that Greg and all the people involved in the films that you guys have been in, and I said this, Noel, when I was on the podcast last time, is incredibly inspirational. The freedom that you see of riding through this amazing terrain on great bikes with people having a great time is something that I watched, as well as listening to the early episodes of the podcast 2 years ago now, and it was something that was really inspirational, and the Tet was a big part of that. And thinking that actually that's the pinnacle, that's where I'd love to get to, where I could do multi-day riding with friends and do something like that. So definitely an inspiration. So the Tet's a big part of my riding journey, or my aspirations and motivations to get on a dirt bike, maybe leave the road bike in the garage and seek a little bit more adventure.
Definitely, and I think that's one of the great things about it. You can just pick up and ride anywhere in Europe. It really is a remarkable resource. And in fact, we've just booked our ferries for next April to Spain. So this was a credit note we had from 2019, which we've now hopefully will get to use next year. But we shall see.
That was the bit the accessibility of it. It was the thing whenever I was do road bike trips, they were generally on my own. And I would just sort of go off somewhere. But there was always that barrier to start, because you have to plan it. And the just starting part was always the hardest thing. I think once you actually get going, I would generally just plan the first place I would go to, and then things would happen. But just starting is the hardest part of any adventure. And I think if you've kind of shortcut where you're going to go, that's incredible.
Well, just to be able to download that GPS file
yeah,
and just set off with that guide on your handlebars, it's phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal.
I think the big difference that I had as well was when I did road riding, I'm not one of those people who thinks I'm just going to go and get fish and chips 200 miles away. I tend to want to go somewhere. And my issue was always I would get on my bike, and after half an hour, I would just want to get to that place. And I would forget that the adventure was the journey and not the destination. And I would find that I was pushing on, or I was thinking, I want to get to that place so then I can do this thing. But when I go trail riding, I get to a point where I'll do a section sometimes, and sometimes I'll ride it back and I'll ride it again. And that's something that I've never done before in my kind of riding experience, because it is so much fun just to go slowly. In my case, especially just to go slowly and do a couple of sections, or try and improve my riding over some difficult terrain or something like that, which is very different to my road riding, which is something again that I really enjoy and is a completely new experience for me. Even though I've been riding a while, I became maybe a little bit, when I was doing my road riding, it was just a case of getting somewhere and it was a means to get there. But trail riding is just such a different experience. Stopping every now and again, talking to your friends, how'd you get on over that? Or my experience of, wow, that was really hard on my old WR, and the beta just makes it so much more fun. So again, the experience of trail riding has kind of opened my eyes back up to having fun whilst riding, as much as road riding is great fun.
Well, that's always been my theory, that's why people that ride on the road exclusively go really fast, because that's the only way it's fun.
Yeah, I was worried that I was going a shit way. Though, if I was going somewhere, I think, well, I'm going to go there, and I would worry, well, have I taken all the shit roads to get there, or was there a better fish and chip place, or what did I miss some amazing mountain pass or some whatnot? If I did it in California, I rented this Harley Davidson and on a whim, basically, and just went south. I got halfway to eventually where I ended up, thinking I don't really know where I'm going. I've got no kind of purpose. And have I missed out all the good stuff?
Was this just on the day or in life in general?
Oh, in life in general. Yeah. Still getting over it,
mate.
So I love road riding, but I found what I can't do when I'm riding on the road is switch off completely. Whereas when I'm riding on trails, all you're thinking about is the track ahead of you and how to survive it, and not come a cropper in front of somebody's camera.
Yes, I always say it's like meditation in a way, because you literally can't think about anything else. Otherwise, you're going to hit a tree or something.
Yeah, so I used to hear people talk about road riding and saying, it's just so great, I can switch off and just forget about everything. And that's just not the case for me at all. I'm constantly sort of thinking about all my hopes and fears whilst I'm riding along on the road. But as soon as I'm on the trail, all you're thinking about is not falling.
And with your bladder, you're always looking for a toilet as well.
Yeah.
Does drink a lot of tea. I know coffee as well.
I have to say that bit in, is it the Secret Shack, the latest film?
Yeah.
The Love Shack.
When Clive was explaining how to ride in ruts and then had a little whoopsie in a rut, that is like my favourite bit, because I think Will described it and Clive described it, and it was exactly the same, almost word for word. And so as much as it's great when you're in the zone and you flow through the trails and stuff, from an audience perspective, that part of Secret Cabin is one of my favourites. I think it's absolutely hilarious. Though I'm sure, Clive, it wasn't hilarious for you, and I do feel sorry for your toe.
It was so funny, because I was like, yeah, listen to me, I am the master and you're the Padawan and you should follow my instructions. Ow!
Shameless plug. If you haven't watched The Secret Cabin, go watch it. It's amazing.
Do we want to say anything more about the Tet other than to worship at the feet of Mr. Ross?
Well, also I would just say, all I would say about the Tet is deal with it through the website and not so much through the Facebook page.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what? I unsubscribed from the Facebook page because it's so big that there's so much stuff just coming through.
It has the capacity to put you off it, I would say, the Facebook page a little bit, possibly.
But it puts more barriers up, doesn't it? This is the thing we were saying before, that it's reducing barriers by saying, here's a place, just go off and ride this route, you can do that. And then people put up more barriers by saying, yeah, but which tyres?
Yeah.
What oil, etc.
So we sorted tyres out last week.
Here's a question. Is there anything that you need for the TET that you don't need on a day's riding with a TRF or an outing or something like that? Is there any difference between trail riding on a day and the TET? For someone going
a day ride or a multi-day?
Either. I mean, I assume that the TET, if you're going to go and ride the TET on a day as a normal route, it's just a normal route. But is there any
a sat nav? You have a sat nav. When you use your phone, that's all you need. Something to look at the GPX file from.
Yeah, but I expect this was the thing. If it's a multi-day, I was stressing about where we were going to stay at night, and I was, making contact with people along the route and research.
Well, I think this is a subject for another episode. I think because I think it'd be quite interesting to do a multi-day adventure planning podcast. To work out, mind you, not that we actually do a lot of planning.
But that worked, didn't it? If you had a mobile phone, or we didn't even do that, we would just turn up at campsites and say, got any space?
I mean, we could talk about that now, but basically what we do is you download the GPX, and if you're in France, for example, there's loads of campsites. You don't even need to think about that. What your guys did on your last trip to Spain is you would get partway through the day, see where you were, and then try and find somewhere. And you were staying in fancy hotels, weren't you?
Yeah, for €30, yeah. And there was one thing that was a little bit daunting. We had a place booked for the first night. We got off the ferry and rode straight to that place for the first night. That was all arranged. But after that, we were just on a whim, really. But it worked it worked brilliantly. Booking.com is great for that. There's so many places open up to you that are available. You've just got to sort of go for which one off the pictures. But my experience in Spain was that it was very, very easy, and there were all places that we'd happily go back to. I think the only answer I would have would be for the difference between the TET trip would just take more coffee and more Uncle Ben's rice for the TET trip.
Oh, you don't eat that foreign muck, do you?
Other than that, they're exactly the same.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to eat any of that Spanish or French food now, would you?
And in my experience, you don't take any of that. You don't even take a cooking pot. You just ask Noel to boil you up some rice.
Yeah. I think they've got a relatively popular rice-based dish in Spain, though.
That's the end of part 2. Yeah. I think we've got enough for part 2. For part 3, we're going to talk about what tools and other things you need to bring with you.
Zip ties.
Zip tie. We're not doing it now, Alex. Save it.
Doing it now, Alex.
Jesus.
It's the only thing I take with me, just zip ties. So it can't be fixed to zip ties and WD-40.
He's doing it again. We're going to talk about riding on your own and what you should and shouldn't do if you actually go out on your own. And we're going to talk about some riding tech, which is great because we've got the 2 IT guys with us. And we're going to talk about the do's and don'ts of how you should and where you should ride, some kind of code of conduct stuff. Gentlemen,
right.
And I think there's possibly even another podcast there about, as I said, planning, multi-day trip planning.
Probably another one after that, all about my cat.
No. Thanks for listening. We really appreciate your support. Don't forget you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you really appreciate what we do, you could consider supporting us on Patreon or buy us a coffee. Links are available on our website, which is tampodcast.com, tampodcast.com, where we also have a limited selection of branded stuff. But either way, please keep listening and spreading the word. See you next time.